been getting some great questions in the chat. Keep them coming. We got a few also from people who registered when they joined. So I was going to hit those first, and then I'll be sure to hit the ones in the chat. So one of the questions we got, and Gabe, why don't you take this one, is what makes you different from Upwork or other marketplaces and agencies? And how, part two of this question is, how can you operate with such low rates compared to many other suppliers?
Yeah, great. Happy to cover this one. It's funny. This was one of the ones that we got when we were first, raising the seed capital for Braintrust, and many of the investors said, how is this not just Upwork, right? What's different? And we said, well, we think that by lowering the fees as close to zero, you unlock a whole new category of jobs that would never touch a high fee marketplace, right? Because when large jobs go on to these high fee marketplaces, the incentives of both the client and the talent is basically to get that job off the platform as fast as possible to save on all these exorbitant fees, right? And so you kind of see that in the business model of the Upworks, which is like, I think the average job size is somewhere in the neighborhood of $299, right? So it's great if you want to, do a WordPress site. If you're a dentist and you want to do a WordPress site and you want to get that up really quickly, and it's using somewhat unskilled labor for a very small interval job and a small dollar amount job, right? If you contrast that with the kind of things that are on Braintrust, I think our average job size right now just crossed $90,000, and is typically like 9 to 12 months in duration. So much longer jobs, much larger jobs, and then the nature of them is quite different. You see talent on Braintrust working on, designing the new CarPlay system for a large automotive company. You see talent on Braintrust building, software to track shipments to the space station for NASA. So that's really the impact of dropping the fees as low as possible and giving away ownership as widely as possible, as you create better incentives for the talent. And you also, create a lot of stickiness with large ongoing projects, which again, just attracts more talent. So it's really comes down to the incentive model and how that attracts higher quality talent and larger duration jobs from large enterprises. So I think we are the first, talent network to really have this kind of enterprise adoption. And I think it's because of that kind of low fee model. So then the question becomes like, how do you do that, right? Like, how do you operate at that kind of, how do you sustainably operate at that kind of low fee model? And the way that we do that is through two things. Number one is like we build software to do things oftentimes that people have done. So, this year we're on pace to do just under $100 million in revenue. We'll do that with approximately 36 employees and a giant community of contributors. So that's the difference, is that like if you were going to build an Uber today, or if you were going to build an Airbnb today, they would have very, very small core teams and giant communities that contributed to the success. So the simple answer is that we actually run very, very lean. We don't spend a lot of money on marketing programs, because we've got people like Carol that are spreading the word and helping to get the word out about Braintrust. And we build software to do things that traditionally in this old world were done by, armies and armies of people, and huge, billions of dollars spent on Google AdWords and things like that. So that's really the difference of like how we can operate at such a low margin. And going back to my early quote is like, there's a famous Jeff Bezos quote that says, "Their margin is our opportunity." And that's kind of how we've always operated here at Braintrust. Is traditional staffing firms, et cetera, operate at like 20 to 70% margins and basically keep all of that for themselves. We operate at a much smaller margin, but push the value back to both sides of the network. And by doing so, we're able to grow faster at a much lower, operating costs. So hopefully that answers that question. Happy to do a follow-up if necessary.
Next question, we'll toss to Grady. Question, are you US only or global, and what countries do you support?
So I guess starting on the talent side, very, very global for both, by the way, is the answer. But on the talent side, we skew everywhere. I'd say our biggest markets are going to be US, Canada, North America. And that's primarily because many of our early clients were located in which they were demanding kind of US or North America talent. So we started there, and it's still the lion's share of our talent community, probably 50% or so of those that get placed on the projects. Next big grouping is going to be Europe and Eastern Europe. We have a very strong population in pretty much every country over there. India is a very large and growing segment for us. We're seeing a lot of workers in India who have always worked under traditional agencies and then basically been arbitraged to US companies at a high rate but paid very, very low. Are figuring it out, and they're kind of going direct to employers through Braintrust, able to increase their rates by 3, 4, 5x and still be much below the market rates these clients are used to paying. So India is a big growing spot for us, and then we've seen a lot of pickup in Latin America. So we've seen a lot of our kind of US and North America customers kind of being very keen to pricing and price sensitivity, as well as like the skill sets that they can get from Latin America, as well as time zone coverages. So both South and Latin America has been a pretty big growing skill set for geo for us as far as hires. And then on the client side of the equation, we still skew, like we work with a lot of very large global companies, but a lot of them have like the US teams that we work with. So the teams that we work with in many cases are actually based in the US, but they're hiring globally, which is why we beefed up a lot of our international compliance and EOR capabilities as well, where we can now do either contract or EOR, and I think it's 130 plus, maybe 140 plus countries. So from a talent perspective, if you're interested, we've got global talent and we've got a lot of them who are looking for great work for US and non-US companies.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Grady. Last question that came in from the registrants was people, and this one's to Elena, people are super excited, Elena, about this AI-powered matching engine. Could you tell folks a little bit more about how it works? The person who wrote in specifically asked for tips and tricks on writing prompts and submitting requests to help the LLM you're using identify qualified candidates. But you tell us how it works and how people can use it effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of the things we do, we simplify, so no prompts needed. What we will use is the job descriptions people write. And then there's also the questions that tend to go more around the culture of the company or what type of work the person is going to be doing. And we use all of that information, historical information, and we input what our matching and screener team do as well, in addition to then feedback from the hiring manager. So a lot of the times we get, more like Grady and Ann, but fewer like Joe and Daniel. So that helps us then understand beyond what's written in a resume, beyond what we can get from a portfolio or a GitHub link, the specifics of what makes a person successful at a particular company. That tends to be a little bit different than just the text. And then the third unique to us piece of information is all of the conversations and mentorship that's happening in the professional network. And this gets at really hard to gauge skills like mentorship, coaching, communication, things classified as leadership. Will this person be a great manager? They can write that they were a great manager on their resume, but you can't see that, hey, this person is helping coach a junior engineer, or hey, this person is starting an AMA group about AI leadership. And this is information that is unique to our ecosystem that continues to grow. And as people help each other, we're able to then understand those signals and leverage those signals to really help match the right people for the types of work and the types of jobs that you all have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Elena.